You were very busy at the time when people may have assumed that you would not be busy, and that's during COVID. Because from where I sat, the airport was closed. No flights were coming in, no commercial flights were coming in as far as I was aware. But you continued to be really busy. What was it that kept your team so busy during COVID?
From the economic regulatory side, we do have responsibility for granting those operating permits to all carriers, so whether it's scheduled or non-scheduled. And during COVID, there still were a certain amount of non-scheduled or / charter operators that operated to the territory for specific reasons, including air ambulances. And we saw quite a few air ambulances come and go at that time.
I guess air travel has changed. I think COVID changed it for us. You see more and more people being prepared to take private flights and charter private planes sometimes on a daily basis. You may see up to 40 private planes land here. Are you responsible for that? What's your role in that process?
We don't have to issue licenses or permits to private operations, but for charter, non-scheduled operations, and we've done upwards of 650 in the past per annum, we do issue operating permits for that, and it's to ensure that they meet the safety remit and that those charters coming in here can safely operate into the jurisdiction.
I love numbers, and you've introduced numbers into the conversation. You wear different hats as an organization. You're a regulator, but you also have a component to what you do, which is the registration of aircraft. And I want to say of private aircraft, but there's a huge component of your register now that seems to be growing. That's not what we would have historically referred to as private aircraft. Let's talk a little bit about that component of what you do. And that is the register. What's the size of the register right now, as of today?
So the size of the register now is probably around 360 aircraft. It has grown in the last 3 years, primarily because of a niche market that we've pursued. We have what we would describe as your continuous operational aircraft, and then those that are just transitioning. But they all have to be registered, they all have to be accounted for, they all have to be given the same level of safety oversight, no matter what their roles are. So, but as you rightly said, primarily the larger numbers on the registry are under either a corporate or private type operation for high net worth individuals, corporations, for functions, their global operations.
So basically private aircraft, your register of privately operated aircraft. And that's what historically, that's what your register has been. But somewhere about 2018, you took the decision to explore what we refer to as transition aircraft. Will you tell us a little bit more about what that means?
We entered into this niche market from a request by aircraft lessors that had some helicopters that were operating on the register in different jurisdictions. And in those jurisdictions, they also had aircraft that were registered in those jurisdictions. To move those aircraft out of a lease agreement arrangement, there were certain challenges as far as the efficiencies of registers and how the aircraft could be taken from one register to the next and moved, and then be modified if it had to, or maintained to a certain standard to be then passed on to another operator. So having facilitated those requests, we started to learn more about the leasing of aircraft and the transitioning of aircraft between lessors. And we took a keen interest in that and decided that we should pursue that niche market, given that the level of requests we were getting had been increasing. And so it went from just helicopters to what we would refer to as fixed-wing aircraft. So your single-aisle commercial air transport, like your 737s, A320s, and then your A330s and your 777s as twin aisles. So the interest grew, and we decided to introduce ourselves to what we would refer to as the capital, the global capital of aircraft leasing, which is Dublin, Ireland. And with some of our partners on Ireland, and without referring to the Maples Group, was instrumental in that introduction. Word got around that Cayman is a jurisdiction for the efficient and safe transitioning of aircraft between lessors.
Yes, because at that point in the life of the aircraft, it's actually not operating, and therefore you have the ability under the Air Navigation Overseas Territories Order to actually put that aircraft on your register, but to ensure its continued compliance.
That's the key to the thing. From the onset, we decided that we were not going to be a register. We would refer to a parking lot register. So there are some jurisdictions that facilitate aircraft being registered that are going to become dormant. We didn't want to be that register. In the lessor's interest is to have the aircraft available for the next lease on demand, and that is so important, because that demand could come in one day and they want it the next. So the focus was to have the aircraft maintained and operational throughout its time on the register until it could be transitioned to another operator.
If you would ask me, I'd probably say you are a Cayman Islands operation, but it sounds to me like you have a global footprint. What does that mean for us? Tell us a little bit more about that global footprint.
Well, from the early days, and I keep referring to the early days, and you go back to the 70s.
That's before my time.
There was just a smaller global industry, especially with privately owned and operated aircraft, and it was very, very high net worth individuals who could afford that at that time. And the registry was always involved in some of these operations. So that started the exposure for global operations. But even beyond privately owned operated aircraft, we do have commercial aircraft that are based in other jurisdictions that operate under a Cayman Islands register under an arrangement that we refer to as an Article 83 bis.
Okay, what does that mean?
Okay, so an Article 83 bis is an arrangement under the International Civil Aviation Organization where two states can agree on the operation for commercial purposes of an aircraft. So the state of registry, which in our case would be the Cayman Islands, could have aircraft domiciled in another state, and that state would become the operator. Both states, the operator and the state of registry, will agree on the level of oversight and the various responsibilities for that aircraft. So in our case, we have an 83 bis arrangement with Saudi Arabia. We've had that in place since 2006. The second largest airline in Saudi Arabia operate the aircraft primarily under the Cayman Islands Aircraft Registry. In our case, we maintain responsibility for the maintenance and airworthiness of the aircraft. We transfer responsibility to the Saudis for pilot's licensing and general operation of the aircraft. And for us to maintain our responsibility, we have a team that's based in the UK of airworthiness surveyors that visit the jurisdiction in Saudi quite frequently to conduct oversight activities.
What is the difference between an Article 83 BIS agreement then and the Cayman Islands Air Operator Certificate? Because that's another means of being able to operate an aircraft commercially while it's on the Cayman Islands register.
An air operator certificate, as we refer to an AOC, an operator under a Cayman AOC would be established in this jurisdiction or not, and their entire operations would be under oversight of this aviation authority, of this Civil Aviation Authority, Cayman Islands. So there would be no shared arrangement. We would be responsible for the maintenance and airworthiness of the aircraft, flight crew, and their general safety management systems and everything that's associated with that operation.
How are you able to do that, Nikki, from the Cayman Islands?
So for those clients that are located offshore, that are globally based, there is a framework in place between the Civil Aviation Authority and Cayman Enterprise City, the Special Economic Zone, where a principal place of business can be established, and staff do actually work within the jurisdiction, and we have access to records, to staff, to operational control of those operations.
On an ongoing basis?
On an ongoing basis.
24/7. You can show up at any point in time.
That is correct.